Steve Sarkisian, right? You got to put him out there.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to throw. So Steve Sarkisian is a little bit more of like the newer school. I think. Are we off Dabo, or is Dabo still in the mix?
I don't think Dabo will be in the mix. I don't think.
What about Lane?
I think Lane is always in the mix, but I think too, like the buyout situation is going to be complicated, and also
for Sark too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For all these coaches, like whether it's Sark, Kiffin, Dabo, Lanning, anybody you want to mention who's currently sitting at a Power 5 job, the buyout's going to be a tough deal. But there's also the question of like, do you want to follow Nick Saban at Alabama?
Right.
You're putting your own like, I think, priorities on top. Not priorities, but I think you're attacking that from your own biases in a good way, because I agree with you.
You want to go to the Bulls after Michael Jordan retires and wear the number 23?
I think it depends on who you are and what job you have. Like we were just Sark, there's no way I'm leaving Texas with what I've got going, with how happy they are to be back. If I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I do take this. Why not? I mean, he seems more like the guy that's willing to take that risk, that says, sure, I'll take that shot. But to your point, I mean, Saban is a very smart man. And I do think, like, I wonder if nothing had changed in college football, if he would still be coaching. You know, I think there is an edge that's gone. And he's been one that's been out in front of it saying, hey, we need more parity. But it's also getting a lot harder. Now, there's also the rules. It's a lot harder to do this year round. We talked a little bit about that today. But like the next coach, the expectation is going to be you need to match what Nick Saban did or come close to it every year. 11-1, 12-0, 10-2 is a horrible year. Look at the schedules for all the SEC teams. Like it is a new dynamic, like you've been saying, Chip. I don't know if fans are going to realize that as this kind of process plays out. That's going to be just a pressure cooker and what's probably going to be almost an impossible task in the new landscape to even come close to the type of record that he accumulated.
Is there any chance that there's a successor on the staff right now?
Possibly.
I mean, is it his guy? Wow. I mean, if that's the case, it has to be his guy. Don't you think it would be like his appointment? Like that they have that much respect for him? But does he have a relationship like that with anybody on his staff? I mean, besides Kevin Steele, who just retired, like Tommy Reese, they're not giving it to him.
Yeah, that staff has been so overturned in the last 5-6 years, where it's like there really has never, like, you go thinking back to, like, you mentioned Mac Brown, Chip, like the coach in waiting, Will Muschamp, and all that kind of stuff. There hasn't been anybody on that staff long enough to really get that kind of, well, this is obviously the guy that's going to replace the guy. So yeah, I have no idea. Like that's why this is a fascinating gig, because every single big name is going to be attached to it, and they should be, because A, it could be leverage for them for new deals, but B, it's one of the prime jobs in the sport. But like I mentioned, how many of those guys want to follow Saban? And so it's like, I feel it's going to be tough to make this hire, because you have a very attractive job to sell. You have very high demands from your fan base and very high expectations, and it'll be interesting to see how do you meet those expectations? Because I feel like no matter what, there's got to be some kind of sense of a letdown. You're going from Nick Saban to somebody who isn't Nick Saban. Like, who can you really hire where everybody's gonna be like, yay?
And what are the odds? I mean, they could hire Bill Belichick, and the fans would probably be like, oh, no, he hasn't won lately. It's just going to be impossible.
Pete Carroll? Available.
He is available. You know who else is available that would make sense to me? I don't think he's interested in the job, but I think would be great at the college level. I think Mike Vrabel would win a whole bunch of games and very much fits.
It's a great name.
The kind of culture and what Alabama is and was under Nick Saban at its best. I don't think he'd have any interest in it, but I think something like that. Like, I don't know if it's going to be a quote unquote established college football coach, but it could be a very good coach.
Well, also, I don't know if Vrabel obviously is going to have a lot of suitors in the NFL. Does an NFL coach want to go into that mess right now? That's why I think that's probably unlikely.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know, man. Like, you can name any coach right now, and the thing about this gig is, it's like, yeah, they might be interested. Like, it's like outside of Jim Harbaugh, I feel like there isn't a Power 5 coach that whose name you can't say that would not be like, I'd very much consider that Alabama job. That's a pretty damn good job to have. Like Kirby, no. Harbaugh, no. Other than that,
if it gets to Lane, Lane's skin is so thick and he's been through so much that I just think that he would be able to take the pressure cooker part of it.
mm-hmm.
The
chat wants us to say Dion.
No.
Excuse
me. I will say it for the transcript. So, Tom Fernelli, let us talk about Deion Sanders and the potential that Deion Sanders might end up being the Alabama coaching search hire result, it being Deion Sanders, head coach of Colorado, Deion Sanders.
You know what I've heard, Chip? I've heard that if Deion Sanders replaces Nick Saban at Alabama, he's going to bring Arch Manning from Texas to be his quarterback.
Deion Sanders, Arch Manning, Deion Sanders, Arch Manning. Okay. Speaking of Manning, what about Lanning?
It makes sense.
Buddy, I had the profile as like, okay, because, right, you were staffer, right, for like a year at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You leave with Kirby. You're an assistant for Georgia, a very successful one. You go to Oregon, and man, the opportunity for Alabama might be there, but every bit of momentum is behind you at Oregon right now with the move to the Big Ten, with the way the investments are happening behind the scenes to be able to power Oregon to stay at that elite championship contention level. So I'm kind of like you, Tom, with sort of put yourself in his shoes, but I'm not in his shoes and I don't share his perspective. Maybe Dan Lanning has thought in the back of his head, if Alabama comes calling, that would be something that I'd be interested in. Who knows?
I mean, listen, I've been around this sport long enough to know that coaches say things and you can only take what they say as gospel to a certain point because things change. The math changes and the calculations change. But when Dan Lanning was saying about a month or so ago, maybe even a little longer, about how he loves Eugene, he's got his kids there, and he wants to watch them grow up there, I thought he meant it. Like, I thought he was somebody that's like, listen, I've got everything I need here. If I want to compete for national titles, I have everything I need to do it at Oregon, and I'm in a place I like. So Dan Lanning is a great candidate that makes a ton of sense. I will not be surprised. Like I said, calculations and the math can change, but the feeling I got from Lanning is I think he's genuinely happy at Oregon.
What do you think?
So much that.
Go ahead.
So much of Dan Lanning, I think, depends. Like, I don't know what he wants. He spent time in the SEC. Does he have a competitive drive to win there as opposed to the Big Ten where he's going? Because I think money's going to be all the same. Phil Knight he'll match any offer. But does he feel like he can get better resources at Bama, better access to the South, better access to high school recruits? I don't know. But he'd be he's definitely going to be in the conversation, but I don't know what he wants. But what's interesting is in all these jobs outside of Lane Kiffin, like in the names that we're talking about, I know Alabama is the best, but is it top 10, 15? I don't know that answer. And to be the guy that follows him. I don't know if that's what I would do. Now these guys are different. Why not wait? You're close to Oregon because this job might be open in 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a fascinating situation.
The Lanning proposition, again, if I was to put myself in his shoes, is that you wait for the next time it's open and that you're just assuming there might be. The Dabo piece of this, we brushed off. Tom, can we elaborate? Because I think you and I are sharing the same sentiment. Why did we move so quickly beyond Dabo Swinney, national championship winner, former Alabama player, got his start there in another generation of Alabama greatness and has had his own relationship with Alabama. So I'll explain my part too. Why did you move so quickly beyond it?
I just think that what Alabama's goals are not Dabo Swinney's goals. I think Dabo was very happy to compete and win national titles at Clemson as long as he was doing it his way. And I don't think the way Dabo likes to do it is the way it can work anymore. Like
I saw a note that Dabo Swinney is the only Clemson is the only team in the top 25 of the recruiting rankings without a transfer portal addition.
Yeah,
as part of the class.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just whether it's Jamison Williams, whether it's Jahmyr Gibbs, you know, we can keep going down the list. The transfer portal has been very important to filling spots on teams that have contended for championships at Alabama. So I'm kind of with you. It seems like Dabo and Clemson are perfect for each other right now, and they might get to the back of the top of the mountain again.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know. I just don't know what the chances are of Alabama having to make this decision is going to look and put him ahead of some of the other names we've mentioned.
Bud's in the chat suggesting D'Amico Ryans, who is an Alabama alum. I don't see a sitting NFL coach leaving for the Alabama job, especially a sitting NFL coach who might have just inherited a franchise QB in CJ Stroud. Like, I have a feeling the Texans could be good for a while, but I can't rule it out.
Any other names?
Mike Norvell. I mean, that's the thing. There's any coach that's had success that is viewed as somebody who is at least willing to compete for national titles and has the desire to compete for national titles is somebody that will be considered for this job, because that is the goal at Alabama. It's not just we're trying to get to the playoff and have a good old time. It's like, no, like Saban has completely rewritten what the standard is there. I mean, they've always one of the top programs in the sport, but now they've just completely, like we talked about at the top of the show, they've changed the sport. Like the sport didn't, like, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Sorry, I'm on way too much cough and cold medicine, but it's just like, yeah, what was I saying?
Well, so you were talking about the way that the sport is changing, the role that Alabama has played in it, and the job that you would be taking over carries so much more weight. So much weight that I've seen in the Cover 3 tailgate, something that has been suggested, that has also been suggested behind the scenes, that if we do get to this place where there is a college football commissioner or a czar of college football or a leadership position that is meant to think of the best interests of the sport at large, Nick Saban's going to be it. If he wants, right? If that's something that he wants to be a part of. There is no one in the sport right now, and I'm including Nick Saban because he's obviously still connected to the sport. There is no one that I have gotten a better sense of in terms of their messaging, the way that they have articulated the issues and the way that they have addressed them, like Nick Saban. And a lot of times he says, and I don't have all the answers. And sometimes that gives me more confidence in you as a leader when you're able to say things like, and I don't have all the answers, but he does have a good idea of where we need to get. If we are building a new college football, if Nick Saban wants to, walk out of coaching and become the new commissioner of the sport, let's go. Give it to me.
What if, I mean, you mentioned, we've talked about it, nobody wants to be the guy to follow the guy, right? So you need something of an interim. What if there's an interim out there who's had plenty of success as an interim and also has a national title to his name?
I
call up the coach and you get him down.
I'll tell you what, if you just need somebody to come in there and just
I get the gumbo
going. I get it going.
I tell you what, we talk all about not being the guy to follow the guy, but let's also take a step back. And I know that we're not going to have SEC East, SEC West, and you are going to be chasing Georgia, which is running really hot. But Texas A&M just had a coaching change, right? Auburn is 1 year removed from a coaching change. Hugh Freeze only has 1 year under his belt right now. You've got a coaching change at Mississippi State. Arkansas might be 1 year away from a coaching change. I mean, you're kind of looking at all your general old SEC West rivals. A lot of them are still in flux right now. The only exception would be Brian Kelly at LSU, who just dropped a bag to be able to take Missouri's defensive coordinator and Texas's defensive line coach, which suggests that someone around LSU understood what might be happening at Alabama and understanding that you might be able to hit the gas and make up some ground right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the challenge is the same when you do have so much instability that's going on elsewhere around the conference.
No, God, this is this is such a, because we focused obviously on who's going to replace Saban at Alabama, but the dominoes that are going to fall from this, because if you do pluck somebody like Lane away from Ole Miss, or you pluck Lanning away from Oregon, or whoever, then another big job comes open, and we're in the middle of January. And, you know, the early signing day period is done. The transfer portal window is closing. But there's also, you know, the spring window that's going to open. Like, this is thinking of like the next steps that come from this. It is going to be a wild offseason because of this. Because when you think of everything that's changing and everything everybody's got to prepare for and all the changes that are still left to come, because the coaching carousel was stopped, Chip. It was done. It'd come to a stop. And now we got to start spinning that bitch again. This is going to be nuts.